All right, we're looking at A40. We're reviewing quadratics. So we're going to hit a little bit of each section to remind you of what you need to be doing here. So first things first, you got to read the directions because they change. This one says determine a solution for the quadratic equation given by the graph. Okay, when I'm asked to solve a quadratic, let's go back to the real basics. We are trying to find x. Do you remember what you're doing? Find x when? No one? Find x when some. No, you're doing something else. Find x when y is 0. Yeah, you got it.
When y is 0.
So when you find x when y is 0, you're really looking for the x-intercepts. Where does it hit the x-axis? So when you were solving these, remember we would set them equal to 0. So find x when y is 0. This is your quadratic given to you. All I need to do is find where it hits the x-axis. On this point, it's 3, 0. X is 3 when y is 0. So what are my solutions? X equals 3. And what's the other solution? X equals 5. So I have 2. Because this point is 5, 0. That is the x value when y is 0. So take a quick second so you don't ignore me and find the 2 x-intercepts on number 2. X is -2. And what else did you say?
0.
And x is 0. They're right here and here. Okay, so that's how quick those two were. I didn't need to use the formula because they already gave me the graph or the equation. Now, jump down to example 3 and 4. In 3 and 4, you're going to have to create your own graph and then pull the solutions yourself. So, first things first. Find the solution for the quadratic equation, fill in the XY chart, and graph the function. Real quickly, is this in standard form? Yeah. A is 1. What's B?
0.
B is 0 because there's 0 x's here. And what's C?
0.
Yeah, I just put C there. C is also 0. Now I'm going to stop there and move. Well, let's just do it. Okay. I've got my A, B, and C. Do you notice down here we have the formula? Do you remember what this formula was for? This is the axis of symmetry. And that axis symmetry is always going to be an equation of x equals something, and we're going to pop that in for our vertex. But let's find it. So it is -b over 2a. All right, well, what is b? 0. And what's a?
1.
All right, and then we always talked about clean up the top. That's just 0 over 2, which ends up, I heard, being 0. So do you remember that axis of symmetry? We would draw that dashed line. This one's right on 0, so it's going to be hard to see there. And this anchors my graph. I know my vertex is right on there, so that's why we put this in the middle. Now, if I have an x value of 0, how do I find the y value to go with it?
You just got to go to the 0 on the x-axis.
And then I plug that 0 in, and what's 0 squared?
0.
All right, so there's my first point, my origin, 0, 0, and I need some more points. So the reason we put this in the center is because that center is my graph. My parabola should go upward like a U. How do I fill in my chart? Pick numbers right below 0, -1 and -2. Pick them right above 0. Now notice your graph counts by halves. So every number, I just go back and I plug it in. -2 squared is what? +4. Watch your negative sign. -1 squared is?
2.
I was going to go with 1, but thanks for playing. -1 times -1. 1 squared is 1, and 2 squared is? Thanks for playing. All right, so let's graph. -2, +4. Got to look at that graph a little better. -1, +1. Got my 0, 0, 1, 1, and 2, 4. Draw in that U-shaped curve. Remember that was called a parabola? Now, we're almost done. You've now got the graph by using your axis symmetry, your vertex, your points, but the last part is to solve it. What are the solutions, guys? So down here by the word solution, remind yourself, it's the x-intercept. This graph only hits one point on the x-axis, which is what? Yeah, look, x is 0 when y is 0. So x equals 0 is my solution. It just happens that your axis symmetry is the same as that solution. Okay, now I'm not going to do all of number 4 with you, but I want to remind you and get you started. First things first, number 4. Is it in standard form? Ax squared plus bx plus c. We're good. If it's not, you need to think about your a, b, and c. All right, well, what is a in this problem? Well, a is the number in front of it, so just 1. What's the b value? And what's c? 10. Okay, so let's find our axis of symmetry. That's what this is. So I'll start with it. It's negative b over 2a. What should I put in there for b? Well, it's going to end up being a positive 6. I agree. Negative 6 is 6 over 2 times 1, which is 2. So what do I get for x equals? 6 divided by 2? Okay. So now that I've got that x is 3 for my axis symmetry, I'm going to plop that in here. And then I'm going to graph this as a dashed line to anchor my graph. Now, what are the other values that I'm going to pick around this? I'm going to go down 2 and 1, and I'm going to go above it 4 and 5. So once you get this graphed, you're going to find the x-intercepts. I'm going to give you a little hint. You're not going to find, when you graph this, you're going to find out what your y value is. You're not going to get any x-intercepts. So this would be no real solutions. This is one that when we graph it, it's never going to hit the x-axis. But I'm going to leave the rest of these y's for you. Let me remind you, whenever you plug it in, it's y squared minus 6 times y plus 10. Make sure you use parentheses when you plug it in. So I just replaced the x with the y's. Okay, so I wanted to get you started. I'm confident you can do that. Let's jump to a couple other ideas. Number 5 and 6, same exact thing. So just going to remind you again, this is your axis of symmetry. That's one of the things you're looking for first. And whatever you get here, you're going to pop in to your vertex. And don't forget the solutions are just your x-intercept. So I just wanted to give you those reminders. Okay, I'm going to move on. Both of these are in standard form. A, B, C would be what? 0. A, B, and C. All right, now jump completely away from graphs, and this one says solve using what? Square roots. So let's do 7 through 10. Pick one of those. 7 through 10, what do you want to do? You want to do number 9? Or 10? 10's bigger number. Let's do 10. Guys, I'm solving using square roots. How many answers should I have? I should always have 2, right? When I take the square root, don't I get a positive or a negative? Okay, so what do I do first to solve number 10? Subtract what? Say it again. No, I don't want to set it equal to 0. I want to get n squared by itself. Okay, so if we were solving by graphing or quadratic formula, I'd set it equal to 0, but I want to get rid of things. So this would be 8n squared equals what? 632. All right, I'd have my calculator out unless you're doing some longhand math. I cannot take the square root until I get rid of that 8. How do you get rid of that 8? Divide both sides by the 8. Because that cancels out, I get n squared equals. Do you need a drink? 79? Okay, I agree with you. Now, my next step is to do what? Square root and square root. So this cancels and I get n equals. I'm going to put my little plus or minus here. What do I need to try to do with that 79 now? I need to try to break it down to a perfect square. Can you find anything that works? I hate to be negative about it, but I don't think there is anything that works. Yeah, there's no perfect square that goes into 79. Yes. So 79 is not going to break down. I tried several perfect squares off my list. So it's just going to say n equals plus or minus square root 79. We're looking for that exact answer. Okay, so I'm going to remind you again, whenever you say, hey, x squared equals 9, what can x be? When I take the square root, it's not just 3, it's what? Plus or minus 3. So always two answers with your square root. Just a reminder. All right, what's different about number 11 and 12 compared to 7 through 10? There's parentheses with a quantity in it, right? So out of these two, let's do number 12 together. Good? So what do you want to do first? Okay, I want to subtract 3. I'm with you. Get rid of addition or subtraction outside those parentheses. Hold on. And I should get 72 here. Now, I want to talk about this. One of the mistakes people make is they distribute that 2. You can't distribute because that's multiplication, and you can't distribute the power, you don't want to FOIL it. So you need to get rid of the 2. Pick it off by dividing it, okay? So you cannot distribute it, you have to get rid of it. What's left is k plus 5 squared equals what? 36. All right, now what's my next step? Square root it, right? The whole quantity squared, so I'm going to square root it to cancel that and square root this. So what's left? K plus 5 equals, think before you answer, I'm taking a square root. Not just 6, positive or negative 6. So when you go to finish this, what are we doing to get k by itself? Minus 5, but this is where I have two different answers. The first one is 6 minus 5, which is what? Which is positive 1, but what else do I have? Negative 6 minus 5, which would be negative 11. So we have two different answers here. So be careful. That's the square root. That's the plus or minus right after it. Got it? Okay. Last idea is what's been the most recent idea, and that is solve using the quadratic formula. So any of these quadratic formulas need to be set equal to 0. Agreed? First thing is make sure it's in standard form equal to 0. And you can see standard form equal to 0. So let's look at number 18. All right, what do you want to do in number 18? We need to set it equal to 0. So you guys pick. Do you want to subtract the 3a squared, or do you want to move this over and make that positive? Your pick. The 3a squared? Okay. So minus 3a squared. And I'm going to put it over here. Now, let's put this in order. Here's my 0 equals. What should come first out of these three pieces? The a squared, right? 0 equals negative 3a squared. Then what should come next? The negative 9a, and then what? Stop it. The positive 18. Okay, so I'm not coming back to this. I want to use this guy. All right, there. And what's a equal? Negative 3. What's b? Negative 9. And c is 18. All right, take your quadratic formula. Remember, you have your card here. And using my quadratic formula card, I am going to plug it in for the a, the b, and the c. So take a minute. You plug it in using your sheet. Double check that you're doing your formula right. I'm recording.
Don't matter.
All right, so I've got the opposite of b here, plus or minus the square root. I've got to take b squared minus 4 times the a value times the c value, all over what? 2 times a, which is negative 3. All right, we're going to break this down into those three chunks. So positive 9 plus or minus something, all over negative 6. Anybody find that something yet underneath the square root sign? I agree. So I'm plugging in exactly what's underneath here as parentheses negative 9 squared minus 4 times negative 3 times 18. So if I plug it all in just like this, 297. All right, 297 is a pretty big number. So the first thing I'm going to do is see if it's a perfect square on its own. Square root of 297. Is it? Not a perfect square. So now I need to think of a perfect square that divides into 297. So look at your square. You can cut it in half and start trying numbers, but you're going to have to put a little effort into it. I believe it should be 9. 297 divided by 9. Yeah, so it's 297 divided by 9, and I get out 33. 9's my perfect square. So remember, we come off to the side, and we make this the square root of 9, the square root of 33, which is 3 squared roots of 33. So go back to it. 9 plus or minus my cleaned up root to 3 square root of 33, all over negative 6. We're almost there. I set it equal to 0. I plugged in the quadratic formula. I simplified the 3 parts. I broke up my root. And the very last thing is look at all 3 pieces. Do they all have a common factor? They all divide by 3. 3 goes into here 3 times. It goes into here once and into here twice. So final answer, x equals 3 plus or minus. You can have a 1 square root of 33 or just square root of 33 all over negative 2. Okay, last part is a little bit quicker. It's the discriminant. So what are you doing for the discriminant? You're just doing the b squared minus 4ac. So it says find the discriminant and give the number and type of solutions. So write that down, b squared minus 4ac, and let's do number 21. All right, in 21, is it set equal to 0? Because 19 and 20 are. Is 21 set equal to 0? So I'm going to leave the 8n squared alone and subtract the 5n. Guys, remember, they're not like terms, so piece it on. What's the c value? Yeah, so a is 8, b is negative 5, and c is 0. All right, so all I need to do is plug it in. B squared minus 4 times a times c is 0. And here's the problem. A lot of you just ignore the 0 because you're like, well, it's 0. But that 0 is important because what happens to this whole chunk? Well, it's negative 4 times 8 is negative 32. And what's anything times 0?
0.
So you really have 25 minus 0 or 25. So I notice a lot of mistakes because people were just dropping it. And the 0 is important to put in there. Okay, there is one part of this that you didn't do yet. It says, what is the discriminant and what are the numbers and types of solutions? The discriminant is that number underneath the square root sign, right? So on the back of your cards, a lot of you wrote the rules, didn't you? So if my discriminant is a positive number, I can take the square root of that, agreed?
Yep.
And I would have plus that number and minus that number. So how many solutions do I have? I have 2 real solutions. Now, if you want to take it one step further, 25 is a perfect square, right? What is the square root of 25? 5. So the idea is I not only have 2 real solutions, but they are also rational. All right, now real quick. If I have a positive number underneath my square root sign, which is b squared minus 4ac, I will get those 2 real solutions. What if I have a negative number underneath my square root sign? I'd have no real solutions, or you could say what? 2 imaginary, because you would need I. What if 0 is the number underneath my square root sign? What if my discriminant's 0? What? I would have 1 real solution, because if I add 0 and I subtract 0, it doesn't change anything, so I get that 1 solution. Okay, so this was to give you a little bit of review. I think the part that will be the most recent will be the easiest for you is the quadratic formula and the discriminant, as long as you get your A, B's, and C's, filled in correctly. The graphs shouldn't be bad, but they can be a little time consuming. You need to go back, remember the rules. Your square roots, you need to remember to do positive and negative answers.